Let's now take a look at how we're going to price financial derivatives. So basically, for the remaining of this lecture and for the entire next lecture, we're going to devote ourselves to exclusively to pricing. Now, the first product we're going to look at is called the LIBOR in arrears swap. Now, the LIBOR in this case is just refer to this floating rate, and later on when we move on from, there's a LIBOR decommissioning, and if we use a different a type of floating rate, the approach here is still the same. So the product itself is not so much tied to LIBOR, but just tied to a particular floating rate. Now, the key structure for this LIBOR in arrears swap is that typically for a swap, you at a reset date, you set the rate, and then the payment is actually paid in arrears. So you paid the next period. So for example, if you are setting a 3-month rate, then the actual payment is actually paid 3 months later, but according to the rate that was observed 3 months ago on a 3-month rate. Here, for this one, you observe a rate and you get paid right away based on that rate, rather than waiting for the next period. Now, if that is the case, however, if you look at this rate, if this is the current forward rate that you observe as the current time for a period between TI to TI plus 1 as observed the current time 0, you see that this thing is a expected value of this 0 coupon bond between TI to TI plus 1. So we would need to get a convexity adjustment here to get the actual forward rate that we can use and to multiply the notional with to get our price. So this is basically related to the what the actual rate that is required. The FI will give you the normal swap rate. It will not give you the rate that you can use for the LIBOR in arrears swaps. So in order to use that, you have to make a convexity adjustment that we have mentioned earlier. So basically, you will need the expected value of this rate rather than the expected value of the rate implied from a 0 coupon bond. So we have all the information here. You need to have the volatility, and you need to have the time of reset and the time differences and so on. So once you have those information, you're going through an adjustment, you get your rate, and you just then calculate your swap normally. Now let's see an example. So if you have a LIBOR in arrears swap with a principal of 100 million, the fixed rate is a receiving 5%. It's an annualized rate, and you pay LIBOR at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, so in the first year, you would observe, and you will get that paid based on that rate right away. So the 0 curve is flat at 5%, so give a discount structure here, and the volatility or caplet volatility is 22% per annum. That will give you the volatility there. So with this, your adjustment is this, 5%, and then, however, so this 5% for all I's, okay, because it's flat rate. Now, for the LIBOR in arrears, you have to adjust this to by this thing here, which is this part with the appropriate values. Then you get a 5% multiplied by this factor Ti. Now, if in the question, the LIBOR swap zero rate is not flat, then you will have to use an appropriate rate here for each I. Okay, there could be a different value here for each I. And then you wouldn't get an expression here. You will get a different one here times some factor Ti, and then, for each of the I's here. But for simplicity, we just use a flat rate here. And so for each of the Fi, it's all 5%. Now, once you have determined this Fi star, you can plug in the Fi star. So for the first year, you would receive 5%, but you will pay this. And so because the Ti is just so here Ti is 1, here your Ti will be 2, and Ti will be 3, and so on. And once you have that, you can see that this is the actual payoff, and you discount it for 1 year, discount it for 2 years, and so on. And each of them you multiply by the notional. So this gives the actual pay structure here. You will see that the fixed side is out the money because you receive fixed at the 5%, but every time you will pay out a rate that is actually higher than 5%. So you will receive fixed, you are at a loss here. This side will have a negative value. Now this question can actually be turned around and presented in a different way. So suppose we have an alternative question here. It says if we have a LIBOR in arrears swap with the same notional, 100 million, receive 5%, and they're paid at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year. Volatility is 22%. And if we say that the swap is at the money, then we ask to calculate what is the full rate structure in the market. Now, in the earlier question, the swap is not at the money. The swap has, at the money means the swap has zero value. In the earlier question that we've seen, the pay fixed side actually has a negative value. Now, in this particular case, we don't know what this structure. So the structure is not flat 5%. So this is the we still call it's still flat, but we don't know what that rate is. So this here we're going to calculate a rate there. So in this case, this value is still calculated the same way. And we just have to figure out what this x is, and with the condition that the swap value is 0. So when you do that, it's you will see that so out of this this condition here with this 0, you can back out what x is. X should be some number less than what we have seen earlier, because before that one produced a negative value here. Actually, on this slide, there was a typo there. There should be an extra bracket here. It's a sum. So x should be some value less than 5%. So let's now move on to a different product.